We're growing, no surprise, right?
Yeah.
Our entire community is growing. Our entire county is growing. I don't think there's a pocket of the county anywhere. I mean, New Braunfels can't say their lead. Cibolo Shirts can't say their leads again because we're all growing everywhere.
Yep.
Because of that, it's putting a strain on a lot of our governmental resources, not just the sheriff's office, but every county office, every local city office. We've only got so much resources to go around, so we're all trying to keep up with the growth right now. I got asked a lot during the campaign, what is the most significant challenge that you see going forward with the sheriff's office? It's the growth, and we just have to adapt to it. Change isn't always easy. Once upon a time, the Guadalupe County Sheriff's Office was a 10 to 20 man station, right? And now we have over close to 125 sworn personnel, so sworn deputies, investigators, whatnot, and then 270 employees when you put the jail and the clerks and all that stuff. And I'm here to tell you that's probably not enough.
Welcome to another episode of Discover Seguin, and I'm Melissa Elizondo. This episode is sponsored, of course, by Bernard Donegan Insurance, and today I am with the Sheriff-elect of Guadalupe County, Joshua Ray. Joshua, thank you for being here today.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited because after we did that episode with the EDC, I was sitting in the other room as Bruce was interviewing him thinking, there is such a stigma around Seguin, especially when it comes to crime. I was a real estate broker for a long time in the area, and I remember it just for years, like, Seguin, really, But after kind of hearing what's happening here and the growth and just all the good stuff, I was like, man, we have got to break that stigma. We need to really talk about it. So if somebody's looking to move here or they feel a certain way about Seguin's past, and I want to bring them into the future. Like, where are we at now? But first, before we do that, tell me how you got into law enforcement and what brought you to want to be sheriff.
So I grew up in a small town similar to Seguin. My dad was a state trooper with the Texas Highway Patrol. You don't have to go far from there to figure out how I got into law enforcement. I pretty much looked up to those guys. My mom was a registered nurse at an emergency room at the local hospital. So both my parents were in public service professions. And I think that just kind of rubbed off on me that I would go that route. My dad is a Vietnam veteran. He pretty much instilled in me and my brother military service. They didn't make us go in, but it was just kind of implied that it was an expectation. So both of us did. We joined the military. I went into the United States Marine Corps. My brother went into the United States Navy and ended up making a career out of it. He spent over 22 years. He works now at the Guadalupe Regional Medical Center. He's a lab supervisor over there. He's a combat vet. I'm really proud of him. I did 4 years in the Marine Corps in the late 90s. We weren't in active combat operations at the time. I was assigned with Marine Helicopter Squadron 1, which is the Presidential Helicopter Squadron. I was a military policeman by trade because I knew that I very likely would go into law enforcement after my military enlistment. At Marine 1, you're really not doing military police duties. It's more of a security function. It's a presidential security detachment. So it was quite different than what I thought I was going to get into. But I discharged in 2000, went straight into the Texas DPS all-service recruit school to be a state trooper, like my dad. That was pretty much my goal. I wanted to be a state trooper. I wasn't thinking about any other part of the profession. I wanted the uniform and the black and white patrol car and drive fast and chase bad guys. and I did that for a long time. For 13 years, I was in uniform. I was stationed here in Seguin and in San Marcos and other parts of the state. I started out in El Paso. But I was in the Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Service. I was in the Highway Patrol Service. I was a canine handler. I was able to do a lot of things in uniform, especially when I came to Seguin. I got really good and adept to the interdiction of drug smugglers and human traffickers and that kind of stuff. I was a pretty seasoned officer when I got to Seguin, but this Interstate Highway 10 was a pipeline at the time because it goes from one major metropolitan city not far from the border to another major metropolitan city not far from the border. Houston is really a distribution point for a lot of the East Coast when it comes to drug trafficking. So I really was able to perfect my skills, and that led me into wanting to be into an investigative position. I was really interested in long-term drug investigations, so I put in and applied for a position with the Criminal Investigation Division in DPS, which is the kind of plain clothes. They do a lot of the undercover work, that kind of stuff. I got in, but I didn't go into a squad that did that job. I went to the Capitol complex. The first question I had was, what do they do at the Capitol?
Yeah.
You know? I got assigned to a counter surveillance unit, and our job was pretty much to work undercover, mix in with protesting groups, and try to detect people that were trying to cause harm or damage to state assets, employees, people visiting the Capitol. I did an undercover role for a little while. Mostly that's an intelligence-based role. I was monitoring, following anarchist groups, just a variety of groups that would try to do bad things down there. Then I went into an investigative position down there, and the DPS Criminal Investigations Division is kind of like CID at the Sheriff's Office or CID at the Seguin Police Department. We were catching cases because DPS has immediate jurisdiction in downtown Austin. So I was working burglaries and assaults and a wide variety of crimes. While I was there, I was able to work some more high-profile cases with the Texas Rangers. The Rangers came in. If anything went beyond our capacity, we kind of served like the local department did. We assisted them. Specifically, I was working a major arson case. A guy threw a homemade bomb underneath a car and lit a car on fire in front of the Capitol.
Dang.
And we ultimately caught that guy. But I became exposed to the Texas Rangers, and then I got on the hostage negotiation team. I was a hostage negotiator. That's led by the Texas Rangers and DPS. And through that exposure, I started to ask myself, I was like, I think I could do this. I think I could be a Ranger. So I started applying, went to a few interviews, and then got selected and was appointed to Texas Ranger, and I was assigned to Bryan College Station. So I moved my family up there and spent the first several years of my career up there, really cut my teeth as a Ranger. Bryan, I was stationed in Bryan, but I worked all over Southeast Texas. My Ranger company was the Houston Ranger Company, so we pretty much had a whole lot of East Texas. It was nothing for me to have to jump in my truck and go to Orange or Beaumont or San Augustine or Houston. We were real active during Hurricane Harvey, doing search and rescue efforts. And I was there for several years working murders, robberies, public corruption, all these different major high-profile cases. And my wife at one night said, hey, I might want to go home. My parents are getting older. She's from this area. And just so happened, a couple months after we had that conversation, New Braunfels opened. The Ranger Station did. The Ranger that was there got promoted to lieutenant, who's a local Seguin boy, Joey Evans. He grew up here. He made lieutenant, and it opened it up. So I put in for New Braunfels, and we came home. And then when we got back, at that time I started. We had moved a lot over my state career. Every time I promoted or did something new, we had to move. She made it clear that we weren't moving anymore.
Oh.
So I started thinking about what retirement looked like, and that ultimately led me to the decision to retire and then go to work for the sheriff and then run for office. So.
So tell me what it looks like. Like what this first year, I'm gonna jump straight into that question. First year of sheriff, like what's your agenda? Like what are you hoping to accomplish? And
so there's a lot. I've spent a lot of time, a lot of thought, a lot of preparation. I've put together a strategic vision for not only my first 4 years, but hopefully beyond that. And then the things that I want to accomplish in the first 90 days. I've assembled my staff that I'm going to have that's going to be our leadership team. It's a lot of it's the same faces that are already there, maybe put in some different key positions. There's going to be a couple new faces, not many, but a couple that are going to come in and help me make this transition. We're growing, no surprise, right?
Yeah.
Our entire community is growing. Our entire county is growing. I don't think there's a pocket of the county anywhere. I mean, New Braunfels can't say their lead. Cibolo Shirts can't say their leads again because we're all growing everywhere.
Yeah.
Because of that, it's putting a strain on a lot of our governmental resources, not just the sheriff's office, but every county office, every local city office. We've only got so much resources to go around, so we're all trying to keep up with the growth right now. I got asked a lot during the campaign, what is the most significant challenge that you see going forward with the sheriff's office? It's the growth, and we just have to adapt to it. Change isn't always easy. Once upon a time, the Guadalupe County Sheriff's Office was a 10 to 20 man station, right? And now we have over close to 125 sworn personnel, so sworn deputies, investigators, whatnot. and then 270 employees when you put the jail and the clerks and all that stuff. And I'm here to tell you that's probably not enough.
Yeah.
Moving forward.
Josh was saying that currently we're sitting at 38,000, and they're saying we're going to be at 50 in just the next 6 years, 5-6 years. And most of that's going in your jurisdiction right now, right? Because it's county. Like, that's where a lot of these new construction's going in. So you have more people. Just, I assume the city takes care of inner city stuff, and then y'all take care of county stuff. Am I wrong? Tell me if I'm wrong.
Generally speaking, it's not completely that simple.
Okay.
We have interlocal agreements, and we work together on a variety of stuff. In law enforcement specifically, we have a mental health unit that's comprised of the Seguin Police Department and the Guadalupe County Sheriff's Office. I actually just met with Chief Brady yesterday, and we were discussing the future of that a little bit. We currently have a narcotics task force that's composed of Cibolo Police Department, Seguin Police Department, and the Guadalupe County Sheriff's Office. Now, we talked a little bit about change. There's going to be some restructuring, some rethinking, some redirection of some of that stuff. That task force is an idea. They are part of that. I'm going to rename it the Special Investigations Bureau. I want to really focus on crimes that affect our quality of life in Guadalupe County.
What would that be?
So we do have our local problems,
Okay.
just like everybody does. I can tell you as a state officer, that's consistent all around the state. It's everywhere.
You've traveled enough. You can actually say that.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
I mean, I've traveled the country chasing fugitives and homicide suspects. It doesn't matter if you go to Ohio, California, here. I mean, we're going to have crime because we live in a free society. And in our free democratic society, people are allowed to make their own decisions. Some are good, some are bad, right? So, but effective law enforcement and effective criminal justice system can suppress that. I don't think, and I've said this, we're never going to do away with crime. We're never, because in that free society, there's always going to be somebody that wants to push that envelope. I think our job and the best way to make the quality of life better for our citizens is criminal justice system, and law enforcement specifically needs to have adequate resources so that we can keep our thumb applied on the criminal element, so they know we're always here, we're always looking, we're always pursuing them, that they're not going to be able to come into our communities and just act freely and do things and hurt people. I think we have a good foundation for that in Guadalupe County. We have got great relationships. I worked really hard when I first got here to build relationships with Chief Brady, I already spoke of, Chief Lowry, Chief Andres over in Cibolo, all the constables. We meet every 2 months. We have a chief's luncheon where we discuss what's going on in our communities and how we can help each other. I'm really excited about the leadership that we have because we're all willing to work together to try to make the life of our citizens better in the entire county.
Yeah.
Our county attorney's office, now I'm working there. I left the sheriff's office, and I've gotten to see what we do in the county attorney's office, because those two things go together, right? Arresting the offender is just part of the equation. Eventually, they got to be prosecuted, right? And you need effective prosecution. And I feel good about our county attorney's office. I've been in jurisdictions where I can't say that, that it's been difficult. But we live in a county where our elected officials and our department heads all work well together to try to get the best result. And I'm really excited. We have a great foundation, and plus we live in a community that supports law enforcement.
Yeah.
So that's, especially in today's climate.
Yeah.
I mean, you live in Minneapolis or San Francisco, you can't say that.
Yeah.
But in Seguin, Texas,
I've been living in New Braunfels for the last 22 years, and when I first moved there, it was about this size. No traffic, no crime really. That I remembered, that I knew of, and so
Seguin's much cooler.
I'm finding that out, by the way. So this whole Discover Seguin is our journey to Discover Seguin, because Amy and I are both transplants here. She's from a small town of Columbus. And so I'm from New Braunfels, and I've been there I was there 20-something years. I'm not from there originally. I'm actually from a small town, too. I'm from Giddings originally, and then I graduated in Schulenburg. So I'm used to these little 2,500, population. Anyway, as New Braunfels grew, obviously our crime grew, and I watched it. Now that New Braunfels is well over 100,000, I think now.
Pushing 200,000.
Oh my gosh! Don't tell me that. I'm so glad I left. I can't tell you. I've had to go back to New Braunfels twice now this week, and I'm like, the traffic. I can't stand it. And I didn't complain while I lived there, but now that I'm here, I'm like, I really appreciate this right now. But obviously, we're going to experience some growth too on this side. And the things that y'all put in place to make sure that this crime, the thumb that you talk about putting on top of that is going to be so important for this community. I want to jump to the question about speaking of the community. Like, what can we do as citizens? Like, what is it that we could do to help support y'all? What it is, should we be looking for things? And then I want to jump to the question about where Seguin was and where it is now as far as crime is concerned, if you know.
Yeah, of course. So there's a lot of things that the citizens can do to support us, right? One thing would be to consistently, when speaking to their elected officials, it takes resources to be able to do some of the things we're going to do. We're going to grow, right? So with growth, you're going to need funding. You're going to need different resources. In order to combat the criminal element that's going to be affecting us, it's consistent as a population grows, not in all cases, but for the most part. You don't have to be a career law enforcement officer for me to tell you that the crime rate in San Antonio is different than it is in Pecos, Texas, right? Mm-hmm. It's population. As your population becomes more condensed and you have more people in a smaller area, look at New Braunfels, right? It's happening in Guadalupe County too. That's going to bring in different criminal elements. It's going to bring in organized crime specifically is transitory. It's international. They don't honor political or governmental boundaries, right? So just because they live in San Antonio doesn't mean they're going to not come over here and commit crime. By having all this, the population growth, the new businesses, it creates more targets for these elements. More subdivisions creates more opportunity. More businesses creates more opportunity. So we have to grow to keep up with it. In my field, it's a constant evolution to where crime adapts, right? The criminals adapt. We adapt to keep up with them. We catch them. They adapt again. So it's constantly moving, and we have to do that, and we have to constantly be innovative and change with them to be able to keep up with them.
Yeah. So where was Seguin? I don't know. How long have you been back in the area?
I've been back here this time since 2020. This was actually, when we moved back this time, it was the third time over the course of my marriage that we've moved back here.
Okay, so 3 times. Tell me,
Yes,
first
ma'am.
time, second time, third time. Has the crime gotten better, worse? Like, where are we at, you know?
I would have to look at the crime rate side by side, and I'm going to be honest with you. The system that we have, this is one of the things I want to accomplish in my first year. The system that we have is not accurately collecting the data. Okay. It's not what's called NIBRS compliant, which is where we submit the data to the state and to the federal government. We're going to go online this year with a new CAD, computerized aided dispatch, and RMS, a report management system, which is going to more effectively collect the data. Okay. So I've already told my staff, after about 6 months to a year in office, I want to evaluate our crime data. And then when I evaluate that data, I will be able to take measures to counter it, and then I will be able to see if we're going to decrease it. So I would speculate, that I would speculate that our crime has probably gone up to some degree because of the population increase. Mm-hmm. Now, there's going to be spurts in different places for different reasons. Like we used to have, I know when I was a young trooper, Seguin was known for the gang presence that was here.
That's what I heard too. That was the gangs. That was the thing.
Yeah, but I'm here to tell you, they were in San Marcos and New Braunfels as well.
Were they?
I've picked up code case homicide investigations when I was a ranger in all this general area. I've interviewed gang members all throughout San Antonio, New Braunfels. They didn't honor the boundaries, right? Mm-hmm. They didn't just say, I'm in Seguin, I'm going to stay here. Mm. It was all over the place. You'd have a big player for a specific gang. I'm trying not to name any specific one, but they would have lieutenants in the different communities that answered to them. Mm. So Seguin wasn't really by itself. It just, for whatever reason, developed that reputation. I would bet that I'd go out on a limb that if you compared the violent crime rate in most of the surrounding communities with us, ours is probably lower. Yeah,
I would say now for sure. I hadn't heard anything in a long time. Probably a good 10 years now. I haven't really heard anything about the gangs in Seguin. I'm sure they're there. like you just said, they were in New Braunfels and San Marcos, and I had no clue. I was just living my happy little life, just leaving my door unlocked for 20 years and not even worrying about it. By the way, lock your door. Insurance wants you to do that. So, but is there anything new happening with the jail? Obviously, population. Do you need more room? Do you have enough for a while? What are you thinking with that?
No, we absolutely need more room.
Okay.
We've already begun discussions on that. Our currently the capacity, inmate population capacity or bed capacity in that jail is 597 beds. Last I heard in court, they're up to about 550 right now, so they're roughly in that area. When I was the chief deputy in that office, we were continually fluctuating between 450 and 490. So they've gone up even since I left. When I was there, I took the data for the previous 10 years to see where we were at to where we are. The inmate population has doubled in 10 years. Now, that's not too much of a surprise because the inmate or jail population is usually a reflection in some sort to the overall population. So as the population goes up, our jail population is going to probably go up. They did a study, the Texas Jail Standards came in and did a study recently, and they're projecting that we're going to need to be upwards of around 850 to 900 beds. I'm going to tell you that's not enough. What happened over in Comal County when they built that jail, they took the jail standard recommendation and they built it, and by the time they got the building built, they were already at capacity.
Oh, wow.
So we have to go beyond that. And Judge Kuchar and I have been having some conversations, also some of the commissioners, about where we're going to be. I think they realize it's a pressing priority. We're going to have to move forward. We can do a couple different things. We can renovate what we already have. We can expand what we already have, or we can build a new jail. So in addition to, you can probably see already the theme is growth.
Yeah.
Here, right?
Yeah.
So not just our jail is going to need to expand, our law enforcement operations are going to need more space. They're going to need to expand. They're going to need to expand our capabilities. I'm in favor of us just building a new one because I think we're going to need a new facility that has much more capacity, that gives us much more flexibility in what we're doing. With the incoming president, right, there's going to be a different focus on immigration enforcement. When they start conducting these investigations and they have these mass deportations, they're going to be looking for bed space. They're going to be looking to Texas sheriffs for bed space to house these individuals until they can deport them out. And right now we don't have the beds. And I actually spoke with one of the commissioners the other day. I said, I think we're going to miss out on some potential funding because we're not going to have the bed space, because the federal government or any entity that we house their inmates, they pay us to do that. And the jail can actually be a money-making operation for the county.
Do y'all have land? I mean, I know where y'all are at over there off 10, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And I know there's some land in front of y'all. Is that y'all's? Or
Yeah, there is. There's land right across the street.
Oh, okay.
And that's what I would like to do, is build us a new jail right across the street and then renovate what we currently have. They did a real similar thing in New Braunfels. The sheriff's office, they renovated the existing jail and made it more space for law enforcement operations, and then they built a brand new jail right next to it. So
yeah, because you are going to need the room for the staff.
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely. Yeah. So where do you think you're going to? Where do you need to be at staff wise?
So that's a good question. The traditional staffing measures for policing, it kind of varies depending on who you talk to. And I'm up front will tell you this isn't scientific.
Okay.
I had to do some research looking into it because I wanted to see where we needed to go, and I want to use the most effective measure to be able to do so. But the traditional staffing measure is roughly one officer per 1,000 citizens in the community they serve. Now,
got it.
Our population in the last census is a little over 180,000. I'm going to go as far as to say we're probably over 200,000 at this point. If not, we're at least pushing it. We have roughly 125 sworn personnel in the sheriff's office. So if you just do the math, 200,000, we're at 125. We're not where we need to be.
Right.
I would like to push us up, at least over my next term, maybe to the 150 mark if I can get us up there. I got to be reasonable. The county can't just pull the trigger and spend all that money at once. It's going to take some time. Luckily, our revenue sources are going up with the population increase. We have more tax revenue coming in, and slowly we'll be able to do that. That will make us more effective. And I also tie that into a crime-fighting philosophy. There's only one scientific proven way to lower crime. One. There's effective ways to catch crime, but there's really only one way to prevent it and lower it, and that's more boots on the ground. That's more uniforms in the community. And it's really not rocket science. If a burglar is going to go burglarize a home in a subdivision and he sees a deputy's patrol car pulling in, what's he going to do?
Yeah, he's not going to do that.
I think I'll go over here and
Yeah.
do it. I'm going to stay away from here.
Yeah.
So the more we can saturate our community with law enforcement, the more likely we are to prevent it. I think in our profession, and I've encountered this in some of my academic studies. I'm in grad school right now, and it's really fascinating when you study our profession as a whole. Somewhere around the 60s and 70s, we really got into this crime fighting model. You know, that's where the stories about the detectives solving crime and all that came up. And yes, solving crime and being crime fighters is important, but one of the original principles by, I think, Sir Robert Peel, I think it was, the inventor of professional policing, was the prevention of crime, right? So if you're a crime fighter, you're solving crime after it occurred. You're not preventing it, right? So we have to do a better job, because it would be better, right, if it never occurred,
Right.
than for us to have to deal with it in the first place.
Right.
Because somebody's already been harmed, some property's already been damaged. But if we can take measures to make sure it doesn't happen, that's probably the community that everybody wants to live in.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so interesting. So what can, like, is there any sort of like, what is it called when citizens do things like community watch, crime watch, things like that? Anything, or is there anything like that here where
Yeah, I
citizens
think you
can-
asked this a while ago and I got sidetracked.
Oh, okay, I probably did too, yeah.
No, it's good. It's good. So we're going to do a couple of things. I've already told my staff, within the first 6 months, I'd like to get our Citizens Academy up and running. Okay. I think it's important, and I've talked to a lot of Texas sheriffs that already have Citizens Academy, and they tell me they're instrumental in just the communication with your community and getting community support. We will be putting applications out on that, I'm hoping, within the first 6 months. To select persons. Seguin Police Department already has a similar model with their Citizens Academy, but that will bring people from the community into our office, and they'll get to see the operation of the sheriff's office. It's a great opportunity to go, hey, why do y'all do this? Or, hey, I see this on TV. Can you really do this? And we get to have those conversations, and it creates an environment that some people may not have with a sheriff's deputy or an investigator or the sheriff, to say, hey, why do you do this? And through that, I think that's going to create more cooperation, because a lot of those Citizens Academies eventually develop into either a foundation like a sheriff's foundation where they can support law enforcement or the sheriff's office, or a citizens alumni organization that comes in and helps in a variety of ways. And that's my ultimate plan. Is our community is already great. We're in the community. They see us, we see them. But it brings it more into the daily operations of what we do and why we do it. And I really think to be successful in life, in business, in government, in law enforcement, it all comes down to relationships.
Absolutely.
You know, and I think that's biblical. I think
Absolutely.
we're designed to be in relationship with each other. And a lot of the problems that we have in our society, if we could just open a conversation and sit down and talk like adults and communicate, I think a lot of times we'd be able to fix a lot of the things that bother us or that are problems.
Do y'all have anything for the kids, like where y'all go to the schools or allow them to, any sort of programs for the young ones to kind of get a glimpse into your life and maybe want to be in law enforcement one day?
Yeah, we send deputies and detention officers and staff that go on like recruiting trips, and they take tables with all the gadgets and all the different stuff. And we also try to participate in a lot of the local events. We've got a simulator that they can sit up and they can shoot at. It's got games on it too, that they can play games, especially for the little ones. They don't want to do a scenario with a shooter, they want to shoot a duck flying by or something. But we've got that. We also take the armored vehicle and we expose them to the SWAT team. That's usually
that's cool.
I've seen that SWAT team with kids hanging all over it. And
I want to do that.
yeah. and in our drones, that's always we've got an entire drone team. The unmanned aerial vehicles, that's become a critical piece of equipment for law enforcement nowadays.
What do y'all do with it?
It really, there's a wide variety of things that we can do. Back when I first started in law enforcement as a trooper, if we wanted to take an aerial photograph of a of a fatality accident scene so that we could show it in two-dimensional photographs in court, we would actually have to get on an aircraft, a helicopter, and go up in the air and take pictures. And rangers were doing the same thing for crime scenes and homicides. But now we can use the drones. I mean, it's much more cost efficient, right, to be able to do that. They can take pictures. Another thing is we've started using them in our tactical operations. So we had a shooting here not long after I became the chief deputy. Our SWAT was in a standoff with a person who had a hostage. Eventually, the hostage was released, but they knew, but you couldn't see just from standing by, was that the suspect had a gun sitting on the dash of his vehicle. And we talked, we negotiated for a long time, but eventually he picked up the gun and pointed it at the police officers, and they shot him. That image was captured on the drone, right? So the drone was flying and was able to capture the image of him picking it up. So that's critical evidence when this goes in front of a grand jury or goes to court. Shows exactly what the officers were dealing with and what they saw. So it's become. I'm sure there's even more ways. The Texas DPS is using them down on the border quite a bit for our border operations. They're a very effective surveillance tool. And they're just cost effective. I mean,
how many do you have? A lot or just a few?
Roughly about 4 or 5 of them.
Okay, that's cool. I like technology. I'm a nerd like that. I'm all into that stuff. Let's see. We talked about that. So, what would you like potential newcomers to Seguin, people who are moving here, as the sheriff-elect, and they'll probably see this after you're in office, but what do you want them to know about living here? Hey, I want to move to Seguin.
That we have good leadership. We have good leadership, and I say that on the city level, on the county level. I really enjoy how effectively we work together because I've been in communities where that's not the case, and it creates obstacles to getting things done, to getting things accomplished. We try. We don't always agree, right? I mean, we have conversations that don't. Sometimes the temperature gets raised a little bit, but we're able to sit down and work through those things together, and then work together effectively to be able to accomplish the things we want. And we're very open. I haven't met a leader yet that hasn't really had an open door to where somebody could just walk in and come in and visit. Now, I'm going to be the same way. If you show up at the sheriff's office and you don't have an appointment, but I'm there, I'll be happy to sit down and talk to you and explain. I really believe in open, transparent, and honest leadership. I don't have anything to hide. If I'm doing everything right, I should be willing to talk about it. Mm-hmm. So I don't mind a citizen just coming and asking me, "Hey, Sheriff, why do we do this?" And I'll explain it to the best of my ability. You may not like my answer, but I'm going to tell you why we're doing it and feel good about why we're doing it. So I really think we have good leadership, and I'm with all these people. City leaders, city manager, the mayor, the city council. I'm with them at all these various events, and we've just really got some good people with good intentions, and they're in it for the right reasons. So this is a great community to live in. I promise you've got effective law enforcement leaders that we're going to do our very best to fight crime and suppress it, to make it a safe community. So, yeah, come on.
Love it. Awesome. Quick question. Who should we interview next? Like, who would be a great resource to be on the show for potential Seguin residents?
Well, I'm guessing you've probably already interviewed Steve Parker.
I haven't.
No, Steve Parker would be great. Okay. We are very fortunate to have Steve Parker in the Seguin community. He's a very intelligent person. He's got a great mind. He's got a lot of experience. He's got a good vision.
Tell the people who he is and what he does that don't know.
He's the city manager for the city of Seguin. He can talk a lot about the growth and the plans and where we're going. And again, it's another opportunity if somebody has a question to say, this is why we're doing what we're doing. And Steve's one of those guys I was thinking of as I was talking about the leadership that we have. We're very fortunate to have him. I'd also recommend my future chief deputy at the sheriff's office, Tarina Skritsky-File. She started law enforcement in 1981 at the Seguin Police Department as a dispatcher. She was a police officer for the city of Seguin. She went to the New Braunfels Police Department, was a police officer, a detective, a sergeant over detectives. She retired, then came back to work for the sheriff's office, became the first lieutenant or member of the female member of the command staff ever at the Guadalupe County Sheriff's Office. She's extremely intelligent. She's extremely respected. She's a competent law enforcement officer. I'm I'm thrilled to have her as my number two. But she's a pioneer in the field. I mean, she came into law enforcement when honestly there wasn't a lot of women in law enforcement.
I will tell you that is the thing I've seen here in Seguin. They were city police, but I saw 3 of them the other day, and I've just never seen that many women in law enforcement in any town that I've been to. And so I just was like, okay, girls, got it. Let's do it. I love it. So, yeah. Well, thanks for being on the show. This was fabulous. Is there anything you want to add at all that I left out? Anything you want to say?
No, just thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to just get to talk directly to the citizens. And again, if anybody has any questions about anything I'm doing or where we may go or what the plans are, please, especially after you can see me now at the county attorney's office, but you're welcome to come down to the sheriff's office after January 1st, and I'll make time.
Yeah. Is there an email or anything if they want to email you that you'd want to share or no?
Yeah, there's a sheriff@co.guadalupe.tx.us. That's currently Sheriff Zawicki's email.
So don't email till January, otherwise Sheriff Zawicki's gonna have to deal with it.
yeah. But after January, we'll monitor that email, and they can email. They can also on our website. I think there's a generic email on there that goes to the entire command staff. Citizens must know about it because we get those emails quite often. So
Love it. All right, thank you.
Yes,
See you
ma'am.
on the next episode.